I always love your analysis and your optimism, and so far you've been pretty spot on, and I hope you will be, because with the scale of the suffering and the misery that Israel is causing, we need to be able to also focus on the strategic and tactical victories, which are clearly there. But I want to ask you now, this truce we heard today, just before we started this program, that it's going to be extended for 2 days. We don't know what will happen beyond that. We know that Israel says it's preparing for the next stage of the war, and 𝐓𝐴𝐶 must be preparing for the next stage of the war. 𝐓𝐴𝐶 and the other resistance groups, particularly Sarai al-Quds, which belongs to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which plays an important role as well in terms of the military resistance. If you were an Israeli general, or if you were Mohammed Deif, the chief of staff of the Palestinian Defense Forces, as I like to call them, what would you be looking at in terms of, if this war were to restart at the end of a couple of days from now? What do you think you would have learned, you should have learned, and what would you be trying to achieve?
Well, I mean, I think the 6 weeks showed that you can't take and hold territory. If the North is the example, where they moved out millions of people, sent them on those virtual death marches, poured all of their armored vehicles into the territory in huge numbers, 15,000 airstrikes from all different types of planes, UAVs, helicopters, reduced 50% of the buildings are non-existent, and then some other percentage of are deeply damaged and need to be fixed. And at the end of that, you have the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 brigades actually working checkpoints to make sure that the aid trucks don't have any Israeli sensors buried in on them. They have the capacity to fight at the same level that they did at the beginning of those 6 weeks. So what does that tell you? That the Israelis, the hints that they appear to be making are that they're saying that the war in the North is wrapping up. This is the beginning of the end of the war in the North. And so where we know right now about the war in the North is that they couldn't get into Beit Hanun. We've seen them fighting on the outskirts of Beit Hanun. We see them on the outskirts of the Shati camp running raids into Gaza City to attack the hospitals. And so now they're saying that their goal is to move to Khan Yunis in the south. Khan Yunis is where Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif were neighbors. And so they, maybe the Israelis believe that they need to go in and do what they did to Ismail Haniyeh's family house and like bomb it and make a press release about how they bombed Haniyeh's empty family home, or worse, they kill their kids like they did when they tried to assassinate Deif in 2014. They just killed his children. If their plan is to move south and not allow people to move back to the north, I don't know. That situation looks like a very, very difficult situation. And the ability to have military success, to be able to pull back from the north and say we conquered the north just because we laid it to waste, I don't see the Israeli generals having that. I don't see that saving Netanyahu and Gallant's jobs. I don't see that happening. But I do see going to the south is apparently what they're talking about doing.
Yeah. And not to mention the involvement of Lebanon and Yemen. And yeah.
And we have to wonder what, we've stressed from the beginning, and this is something I continue to say, that none of this would be happening if the United States didn't want it to. I talked a couple of shows ago about how Ronald Reagan picked up the phone in 1982 and ordered Menachem Begin to stop carpet bombing West Beirut, and Begin had to obey, because if the airlift of bombs from the United States stops, then Israel will be out of weapons in a few days or a few weeks at most. So you have to wonder if there is anyone in Washington who is saying to the Israelis, okay, well, obviously we're going to support you to restart the war because that's what we do, but we don't want you carpet bombing civilians. We don't want you doing all the things you did in the last few weeks. I don't know if anyone is saying that, because this is the same administration that has been pushing the proxy war in Ukraine for, almost 2 disastrous years in which they have lost at every turn, and yet they keep pushing the Ukrainians to feed more of their young people, now increasingly their older people. I saw a report now that the average age of the soldiers in some units in Ukraine is in their early 50s, because they have run out of young people to feed into this meat grinder. And none of this has deterred the psychopaths in Washington from continuing to pursue this mad proxy war against Russia that has led to nothing but utter destruction for Ukraine. So the question is, are these same people, the Antony Blinkens, the Jake Sullivans, the Victoria Newlands, the Joe Biden himself, to the extent that he's even aware of what is going on around him, and that's increasingly questionable. We saw him yesterday. I think they had some sort of Christmas tree lighting ceremony or something outside the White House the other day, and there were people chanting, they were chanting and accusing Biden of genocide, and he was standing there in a baseball cap clapping for them, because he just didn't even understand. It appeared he didn't even understand what was going on. He thought that they were there to cheer for him. So given the complete absence of, or someone in the comment is saying that was in Nantucket. Thank you for that correction. But in any case, Biden seemed completely disconnected from what was going on. So the people in charge, Blinken seems like a complete psychopath, a total monster who will never back down and just escalates at every level. So I think there's a real danger, and this is what I worry about, is that the people in Washington who are effectively running the show will not take this truce as an opportunity to climb down the ladder, but will instead see it as a prelude to more catastrophic escalation. And we just don't know yet, but I think we have to be prepared for that possibility.
I agree. There don't seem to have a lot of ability to rein this in. I think that a lot of it is in the hands of the resistance, and I think there's increase. There's a ceasefire pause in the Gaza front, but Ansar Allah in Yemen has really ratcheted up the attacks. They're requiring multiple U.S. Missile destroyers to be down in the Red Sea, taking down these ballistic missiles that Ansar Allah is firing from Yemen. They're taking Israeli-owned or Israeli billionaires' ships and trying to prevent Israelis from shipping cargo through the Red Sea, making jokes about how they have to ship all the way around the tip of Africa, come up around the other way instead of through the Red Sea. Hezbollah just released an infographic yesterday of all of their attacks. They're carrying out 30 plus attacks a day. They've lost more than 80 fighters. And they're, at any other time, again, we would be calling that a war. The West Bank is in armed struggle. Jenin, 5 fighters in Jenin were killed. They had to call in an airstrike because they were caught in an ambush in Jenin. Tulkarm, Tubas, Balata, Jenin refugee camp, in the city of Nablus, they're fighting. At some point, I think the ability for Israel to carry out these attacks at some point is going to be limited by the resistance, and all we can say is we hope that time comes sooner than later, because if Israel were to fire up another round of massacring civilians in the way that we have just witnessed, yeah, I don't know if any of us and any people in Gaza can handle that, but I know that everybody thinks that the Qassam brigades are heroes in Gaza, and you don't hear people running around cursing Hamas for starting this war. You have very deep support for the Qassam brigades and for the people that are fighting, and you can see that on the street, and you'll see it on the street the day the war ends as well. But to release these prisoners and to continue to release these prisoners so that there's no children, Palestinian children in Israeli jails,
Yeah.
That could happen within the next couple of days with these exchanges, that they will have emptied children out of the prison. That's a significant accomplishment. And they still have soldiers to trade from there.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.